Why hands-free faucets may be a risk to some hospital patients.
Automatic faucets use an electronic sensor to start and stop the flow of water when people wash their hands. These faucets save a lot of water, which is one reason they are found in busy public bathrooms. Another reason is because of concerns about the spread of infection by people touching the handles on traditional faucets. Hospitals started using automatic faucets about 10 years ago. But a new study at one hospital finds that these devices may not always be worth the savings in water use. Researchers took apart 20 automatic faucets at Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore, Maryland. They found that half contained Legionella bacteria, compared to 15% of manual faucets. Healthy people rarely get sick from the bacteria, so the study should not concern most users of automatic faucets in public bathrooms. But Legionella bacteria can cause a form of pneumonia in people with weakened immune systems. These include patients with diseases like cancer and HIV/AIDS, and those who have recently had an organ transplant. After their first tests, the researchers cleaned the water system with chlorine dioxide, but they found that 29% of the automatic faucets were still contaminated with bacteria. That compared to 7% of the manual faucets. The researchers have some theories. Dr. Emily Sidnor says the automatic faucets contain more parts, so there are more areas where bacteria could grow. Also, the reduced water pressure in low-flow faucets might not remove as much bacteria from surfaces.
We think that, one, the pieces and the parts inside are sort of providing places and surface area for bacteria to get trapped, and probably promoting something called biofilm formation, which is essentially just a colony of bacteria that can sort of coexist in a little slime and a little, almost a little colony of it that it's hard to get rid of. And that, combined with the low water flow, is probably promoting the growth.
6 other studies have also found higher amounts of bacteria in automatic faucets. The latest study was presented Saturday at a meeting of the Society for Healthcare Epidemiology in Dallas, Texas. The study has not yet been published, but the results have persuaded Johns Hopkins Hospital to replace its automatic faucets with manual ones. The Chicago Faucet Company supplies the hospital with automatic and manual faucets. Patrick Kimmener, the Senior Vice President of Sales, said he had not seen the full study.
Our company has been around for 110 years. We've been a long-term supplier for an awful lot of healthcare facilities in the U.S., and we're more than interested to find out what those findings would be.
For Japan farmers, radiation fears mean economic pain.
Japan's nuclear crisis may mean greater demand for imported food and less competition from Japanese products on world markets. But it also means that Japanese farmers and others who make and sell food have to worry about their future. Yasumichi Tanaka sells fish at one of Japan's busiest fish markets. But now there are fewer fish to sell.
Fish supplies from the radiation-contaminated regions have been totally halted.
The radiation is from the Fukushima nuclear power station that was damaged by the March 11th earthquake and tsunami. The extent of the problems are still not clear. Last Friday, China joined a number of other countries that have banned imports of food from the affected areas. Chinese media said the banned items include milk products, fruit, vegetables, and seafood. Singapore also has a ban in place. Restaurant manager Connie Han says some people are worried about eating Japanese food.
Consumer confidence is, yes, somewhat shaken, I would say, amongst some of the Singapore populace, but that can be helped, I think.
The United States has also banned foods from radiation-affected areas, and so has the Japanese government itself. Radioactive particles travel in the wind and get absorbed into soil with the help of rain and snow. Then plant roots take up the material, and the plants become contaminated. Animals eat the plants, and their products become contaminated. Some kinds of radiation stay in the environment longer than others. Medical physicist Gerald Bushberg is a radiation expert at the University of California, Davis. Professor Bushberg says removing the topsoil might make the land safe for use, but it depends on the depth of the radioactive material. And for now, he says, it is too early to take any measures. Experts say the ocean will help dilute radiation in seawater, but the tsunami also destroyed seafood, sank fishing boats, and leveled processing plants. Charles Ebinger studies the politics of energy at the Brookings Institution in Washington, D.C. Mr. Ebinger says the danger to adults from radiation-contaminated food is overstated. Still, the affected areas of northeastern Japan are deeply dependent on agriculture and fish, he says. So their economy could suffer the most.
Designing a quake-resistant building starts at the soil.
Builders in developing countries are often not required to build strong buildings. So when a disaster strikes, the damage is often widespread. Yet Japan is one of the most developed countries in the world. Still, the March 11th earthquake and tsunami waves destroyed more than 14,000 buildings. Brady Cox is an assistant professor of civil engineering at the University of Arkansas. He is also an earthquake expert with an organization called Geotechnical Extreme Events Reconnaissance, or GEAR. The group studies major disasters. Professor Cox says Japan has one of the best building code systems in the world.
The problem is this earthquake was just a mammoth earthquake, one of the top 5 earthquakes in recorded history. So anytime you have an earthquake that large, you're going to have damage.
The quake measured magnitude 9.
One thing I think a lot of people don't understand is that building codes are meant to prevent loss of life in earthquakes. That doesn't mean that the buildings won't, or bridges for that matter, or anything won't sustain significant damage.
Mr. Cox says Japan has invested a lot in seismic research and design since a magnitude 7.5 earthquake in Niigata in 1964. That same year, a 9.2 quake shook the American state of Alaska.
Those 2 earthquakes really opened up a lot of new research on something called soil liquefaction in particular, and the Japanese have more earthquakes greater than magnitude 6 or 7 than probably any other country in the world. I mean, they get hit a lot.
Soil liquefaction is the process by which the strength or stiffness of soil is weakened by an event like the shaking of an earthquake. The soil begins to move like liquid. Professor Cox says the first step to designing an earthquake-resistant building is to study the soil.
Then the structural engineers take that information and they use it to detail the building in terms of, is this going to be a steel structure? Is it going to be reinforced concrete? And then you get into all kinds of things in terms of the designs of the columns and the beams and the framing of the building and the connections and how much steel do you put in.
A team from Geotechnical Extreme Events Reconnaissance is planning a trip to Japan to examine the destruction. Mr. Cox and other members of GEAR went to Haiti after the powerful earthquake last year and continue to work with Haitian officials.
A lot of the work that we've been doing has been focusing on the rebuilding effort and how to especially make sure that the rebuilding of schools and hospitals and kind of critical facilities that you would need to respond to an emergency, police and fire stations, government buildings, that those things get rebuilt appropriately.
Children at U.S. schools show their support for victims in Japan.
Cranes are large birds with long legs and necks. In Japan and other East Asian cultures, they represent luck and long life. Japanese tradition says a person who folds 1,000 paper cranes gets the right to make a wish. Some school children in the United States have been folding cranes. They want to show they care about the victims of the March 11th earthquake and tsunami in Japan. Almost 40 Japanese-American students attend Somerville Elementary School in Ridgewood, New Jersey. But all 525 students at the school have heard about the disasters. So they have decorated their school with paper origami cranes. Their wish is for a speedy recovery for the Japanese people. Art teacher Samantha Stankiewicz says the activity gives students a way to express empathy for victims.
For children, the folding of the cranes has been a really positive way for them to just feel like they're actively engaged, even though the cranes are symbolic.
These students thought out loud as they folded cranes in the school library.
The crane is a symbol of hope, so we try to have a lot of hope for those people in Japan.
It makes me feel really happy that everyone's caring for another country.
I feel sad for them, like really sad for them, but then I also feel happy because I feel happy for us because we're really trying to help out.
And that help is not just in the form of paper cranes. The school principal, Lorna Oates Santos, says children at Somerville Elementary have raised about $2,000 for disaster relief agencies.
We will be donating that money to the American Red Cross and Save the Children. There were two groups that are ready on the ground in Japan to help out the people of Japan.
The school has a television club that produces weekly programs on different subjects. Fourth grade teacher Gabrielle King is director of the club and says the students are involved in the school's efforts.
When the earthquake happened, the children wanted to know what they could do to inform other students and raise awareness for the people in Japan. And so we decided to do a show on the earthquake and also making the cranes, the origami cranes.
Some American children have shown their feelings for the victims in Japan in other ways. Yasuhisa Kawamura is Japan's Deputy Consul General in New York.
One American young girl dropped by the consulate a couple of days ago with her own painting. The painting shows the two countries, Japan and the United States. shaking hands over the ocean and say, we are with you. So we're very, very moved and touched by this young girl expression.
Exploring the long and short of hair loss.
Today we talk about hair. We will tell what hair is, how it grows, and some of the main reasons people lose it.
Hair has always been an important sign of beauty. This is especially true for women. Next to the face, hair is one of the main qualities people look for when they consider a woman's beauty. Whether long or short, curly or straight, hair often gets a lot of attention. People who have it value it. Those of us who do not often mourn its loss.
Each hair on a person's head grows from a single tube-like hole in the skin called a follicle. People are born with all of the hair follicles they are ever going to have. The average person has about 100,000 hair follicles. They begin to form on a fetus around the 3rd month of pregnancy. The part of the hair under the skin is known as the hair root. The hair sticking out from the skin is known as the hair shaft. The shaft is made up of dead cells that have been pushed up through the root. At the base of the hair root is a small ball-like formation called a bulb. This is where new cells are formed. These cells receive nutrition from the blood supply under the skin.
As new cells form, the older cells are pushed up through the root. In time, the old cells are cut off from the blood supply and begin to form a hard protein called keratin. Keratin is the same protein found in our skin and nails. These dead cells and keratin are what make up the hair shaft. This whole process is what causes hair to grow. Each hair grows independently of other hairs. There are 3 periods of hair growth. Not all hairs experience the same period of growth at the same time. The period of active growth is called anagen. During this period, hair grows at a rate of about 0.3 millimeters a day, or 1 centimeter a month. About 85% of hair follicles are going through this process at any given time. This period can last from 2 to 6 years.
The catagen period of hair growth comes next. It is then that hair growth begins to slow down. This period usually lasts 2 or 3 weeks. Finally, hair growth comes to a complete stop, and the hairs begin to fall out. This period is known as telogen. It affects about 15% of all hairs at a time. On average, a person loses between 50 and 100 hairs every day. Since each hair grows at a different rate, this process is overlooked. Once the telogen period has ended, the hair growth process begins again.
So, what happens when a person has trouble growing hair or suffers from hair loss? Your genes control how fast or how long your hair will grow. Some people have a longer than usual anagen growth period. These people may be able to grow more hair than the average person. However, others struggle to grow shoulder-length hair. These people have a shorter than normal anagen period. Your health can also affect hair growth. Poor nutrition can cause some hair follicles to stop growing or cause the hairs that grow to become weak or thin. Problems with hair growth can result from thyroid problems or other conditions like anemia, diabetes, and lupus. Health experts say people who experience a sudden increase in hair loss should seek medical advice.
Some hair loss can result from a combination of genetics, aging, and hormones. When this happens, the hair growth cycle changes and the hair follicles get smaller. In addition, the hairs may get thinner and shorter. Soon, the hairs stop growing completely on some parts of the head. People with this condition usually have family members who have experienced similar hair losses. This kind of hair loss is known as pattern baldness. It is the most common kind of hair loss. The official medical term for the condition is androgenetic alopecia.
The Latin word alopecia means loss of hair or baldness. It is also the term used to describe the medical condition that results in the loss of hair. Alopecia areata is the second most common form of hair loss after pattern baldness. It is the most common form of autoimmune disease. In alopecia areata, the body's defenses against disease attack the hair follicles, resulting in a loss of hair on the scalp and other parts of the body. The condition usually begins with small, round areas of hair loss on the scalp. When hair loss takes place over the whole surface of the scalp, it is called alopecia areata totalis. Sometimes a person may lose their eyebrows, eyelashes, or hair on other parts of the body. This condition is called alopecia areata universalis. It is the rarest form of alopecia.
The National Alopecia Areata Foundation says alopecia areata affects about 2% of the population. About 5 million people in the United States have the condition. It affects people of all ages and races and often begins in childhood. That was true of 22-year-old Kayla Martell, the winner of the Miss Delaware pageant last year. Ms. Martell began losing her hair when she was about 10 years old. By the time she was 13, all of her hair had come out.
Kayla Martell began competing in beauty pageants around that same time. In many of the events, she competed without hair. In fact, 3 of the 5 times she attempted to become Miss Delaware, Kayla was bald. She wore a blonde wig the last time she competed, winning the competition in 2010. That win put her in position to take part in the Miss America pageant in January. Ms. Martell has used beauty pageants to help educate the public about alopecia. She compares wearing a hairpiece to other beauty queen traditions, like false eyelashes and hair weaves. She says it is important for people to understand the emotional and social pressure that alopecia sufferers experience. She advises people with alopecia to contact a support group to tell them that they are not alone. She also says the most important form of beauty is inside out, not outside in.
Kayla Martell did not win the 2011 Miss America pageant, but she was one of the top 10 finalists, and her public comments have helped raise public understanding of alopecia. Except for their hair loss, many people with alopecia are healthy individuals, and since the hair follicles are not dead, some people with alopecia can experience periods of hair growth. Ms. Martell's hair grew during the Miss America competition. She now has what is sometimes called a buzz cut, a short crop of soft, fuzzy hair. Alopecia patients may grow and lose their hair several times during their life.
Scientists are not exactly sure what causes alopecia areata. It is not clear why the body's white blood cells begin to attack the cells in the hair follicles. There is no cure for the disease and no effective treatment that works for everyone. Last year, researchers at Columbia University Medical Center in New York reported findings that they hope will help lead to a cure. The researchers found 8 genes they believe may be important in causing the condition. They said many of the genes are also linked to autoimmune diseases. These include rheumatoid arthritis, type 1 diabetes, and celiac disease, a condition that affects the digestive system. There are already effective treatments available for many of these conditions. Other treatments are being developed. The researchers say these treatments could prove to be promising for alopecia patients.
Angela Cristiano is a professor at Columbia University Medical Center. She also suffers from alopecia areata. She says the study gives hope that there may someday be a cure for the condition. The researchers studied 1,054 cases from the National Alopecia Areata Registry. They looked for similarities in the genes that people with different levels of alopecia carry. They found that those with 13 to 14 similar genes had diseases that did not progress. Those with 16 or more similar genes usually progressed to alopecia universalis, or total baldness. The researchers are now working on a genetic test to predict the severity of the disease. Professor Cristiano says the next step is to repeat the study in future research with a larger number of patients.
Scientists search for the lost city of Atlantis.
Is one of the world's greatest mysteries about to be solved? For years, many people have wondered if a place called Atlantis was real. The ancient Greek philosopher Plato first wrote about Atlantis long ago. If it did exist, where was it? About 2,500 years ago, Plato wrote about an island near the Pillars of Hercules. He said it was home to great leaders who had unusual powers. They had many ships and were very scientifically developed. He said their land was as big as Libya and Asia together. And then, in one day and one night, a great earthquake caused Atlantis to sink into the ocean, never to be seen again. Today, scientists know that the Pillars of Hercules was also called the Straits of Gibraltar. It is a narrow waterway that separates southern Spain from North Africa. 2 years ago, an American-led team of researchers began searching for Atlantis in this general area. They started with a satellite picture of what looked like an underwater city near Cadiz, Spain. Then they used a special kind of radar to help them see under the ocean floor.
Cadiz is about 100 kilometers from Gibraltar. Plato wrote that Atlantis once faced a city called Gadara. That is the old name for what is now Cadiz. Here, the researchers found what seems to be the remains of a sunken city that was built in a circle. That is also how Plato described Atlantis. In this sunken city, the researchers found a stone carving that is thought to be an Atlantean soldier. University of Hartford archaeologist Richard Freund directed the research team. He says he found something interesting farther inland in central Spain. He discovered a series of cities built like Atlantis. He thinks they may have been made by people from Atlantis who escaped the earthquake and waves that covered the area. His work was described in a television program on the National Geographic Channel.
There are many people who think that the search for Atlantis is a waste of time. They say that Plato made up the story. They look at his work as fiction, a good story that was never meant to be taken as true. They also think it was not possible for so large an area to be destroyed in so short a time. Professor Freund and his team know that many people think Atlantis was never real, but his team plans to continue their research under the sea and in central Spain.
The Industrial Revolution of the 18 and 1900s was a time of great change for the world. Factories and their machines began to do much of the work that human beings had once done by hand. But many of those machines used coal to provide their power. Pollution of the air and water quickly became a problem. Many people think that the Industrial Revolution was the first time people began to have a major effect on the Earth's ecology. That, they say, was the beginning of climate change. But now, a new report says that humans started these changes thousands of years ago. Jed Kaplan and Kristen Krumhart did the research. Both are with the Federal Polytechnic School in Lausanne, Switzerland. They say people began to harm the planet when they began cutting down trees to make farmland and places to live. The Swiss researchers think this could have started 8,000 to 10,000 years ago.
Trees and plants take in the gas carbon dioxide and give off oxygen. But if a great many trees are cut down, more carbon dioxide rises into the air. That, the scientists say, causes our planet to heat up. This causes climate change, also known as global warming. In 2003, American William Rudiman first proposed that global warming resulted from human activities thousands of years ago. the University of Virginia professor, even thought that this warming was so great that it helped the Earth avoid another ice age. His critics say there were not enough people on Earth at the time to cause that much damage. But Professor Rudiman believes he is right, and so do the Swiss researchers. Professor Kaplan and Ms. Krumhart built a model to see how land use changed over time. Their results show that nearly 2 times the amount of carbon was released into the air thousands of years ago than had been thought. They also made a video so people could see how land use had changed over thousands of years. The video shows the Earth changing from a mostly green color to a planet with large areas of brown.
Archaeologist Dorian Fuller of University College in London directed another study of climate change. He says the air began to suffer when people first started raising farm animals like cows, goats, horses, and pigs. When these animals process food, they produce a large amount of methane. This gas traps even more heat than carbon dioxide. He also says that growing rice in Asia added a large amount of methane to the air. Some of these findings were presented recently at a meeting of the American Geophysical Union in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Other studies will be presented in the journal Holocene later this year. Other than reducing the levels of these carbon gases, what can we do to help the environment? Scientists agree: plant more trees.
That is a curiosity. That is something that people in the southern United States often said when they saw something unusual that could not be explained easily. It also is probably what a number of reporters said earlier this month when they were permitted to see a machine that will be sent to the planet Mars. It is called a rover, and its name is Curiosity. The reporters saw the machine at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California. The name of this space vehicle came from Clara Ma, a student from Kansas. 2 years ago, she won a competition to name the rover. She also plans to be at the launch area in Florida in November when Curiosity is sent on its way.
The new Mars rover is about the size of a small car. It is about 3 meters long and weighs over 900 kilograms. Curiosity is much heavier than older rovers called Spirit, Opportunity, and Sojourner. The American Space Agency says it will take Curiosity about 10 months to reach Mars. Then it will land, move around on its 6 large wheels, and begin a number of experiments. Scientists think Curiosity will send information back to Earth for at least 2 years. They hope it will find signs of life on the red planet. The space agency has called Curiosity a rolling laboratory. It will carry 10 instruments to test the Martian surface. A laser will be used to break up large objects it finds. It will have a drill to cut open and examine the inside of rocks. There are also cameras that can see long distances. Curiosity even has an arm that can touch things and send the information back to Earth.
The new Mars rover will have a nuclear battery that will enable it to travel great distances. It will not use energy from the sun, as in the past. Scientists have not decided exactly where on Mars they will land the vehicle. They are looking for a place that might offer the best chance for finding microbes, extremely small forms of life. However, they think they have found 4 such places. Getting to name the Mars rover was exciting for Clara Ma. Going to the launch will also be special. But there is one more prize that Clara won. Space Agency officials are letting Clara sign her name on the bottom of the rover. Now, isn't that a curiosity? While we are talking about space, here is another piece of news. A company called SpaceX announced that it will be testing a new rocket next year. It is called the Falcon Heavy. The company says Falcon Heavy will be the most powerful rocket ever built. It will be able to carry 2 times more weight than the older Saturn V rocket. And scientists say that it will be able to carry a spacecraft around the Earth, to the Moon, or even to Mars.